Do you use WordPress? Is it secure? Does it perform well? Is it good for SEO? Stick around to find out more. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Digital Insights. So for those who are new here, Digital Insights is a weekly series brought to you by me, Venkatesh Kanchan, founder of BroadWeb Digital, and Harshad Ghodke. He's the head of digital marketing at BroadWeb Digital, where we aim to educate small to medium-sized businesses on how to use digital effectively to increase reach and revenue. So as I mentioned, in this episode, we are going to talk about WordPress. I'm sure if you have been in web for a while, you have heard of the term WordPress. It's one of the most popular CMSs out there. We just wanted to kind of come together, have a chat about where WordPress is, how far it has come. Is it still the best choice? Is it secure? Because there's a lot of talk about WordPress's security, and we just wanted to touch upon whether it is really secure and how does it perform overall, or if there are better choices out there. So there's this stats by w3techs.com, which are actually quite a reliable source of statistics when it comes to technology that's used on the web. They've got this stat of what the market share looks like for CMSs. The latest one that's come out in June 2022 actually puts WordPress right at the top. So according to them, WordPress is 64.2% of all CMSs. Now just think about it, that's a huge number, right? To put it in perspective, if that's number one, what's number two? Number two is Shopify. And guess what Shopify's percentage is? 6.3%. Like if I didn't know, I'd probably say the second one might be like 30%, 40%, or maybe even 20%. But it just goes to show the big drop between WordPress at 64% and Shopify at 6%. Then you've got Wix at 3.4%. You've got
I would like to interrupt, sorry, Wix. And again, like WordPress, it says 64%, and it's the blogging or the content platform and the e-commerce as well. Now, Shopify being only e-commerce, that's 6%, right?
Yeah.
So even if we like if I have to use e-commerce, a lot of times I might choose Shopify over WordPress,
Yeah.
So if you compare with WordPress, I think then Shopify is not maybe even in competition, and maybe another platform that allows you to put in content. And I would be interested what's next after WordPress if we don't consider Shopify to be like a blogging platform or a platform where I can host my news website, for example.
Yeah. Now, that's a good point. If you take Shopify out of this list, then you look at other alternatives like Wix, Squarespace, Joomla, Drupal, and the likes. They're all full-fledged CMSs as well, right? So I think it's probably a bit unfair for Shopify to say Shopify's got a lower percentage of the market because it's a very e-commerce focused piece of software. But I think still WordPress is kind of really leaps and bounds further than the other CMSs in the market as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. Quite a few competitors have come up, and I think Webflow gets a lot of mention these days. They've kind of tend to make it even more simpler for people to kind of just get a website out there. With WordPress, yes, it is very simple for the end user to make a website, especially if they don't have technical knowledge. But then again, there is a bit of learning curve. So Webflow has actually addressed that problem by making it a very seamless user experience to create websites. You don't have to wrangle with databases and setting that up as well in Webflow. It's all there, ready to be used. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Do you have numbers with Joomla and Drupal?
Joomla, according to these particular stats, is 2.5%. Drupal is 1.8%. To be very honest, like I've got quite a bit of experience with Joomla and Drupal, and they were all the rage back in mid-2000s. And even towards the beginning of 2010. But I feel like it's kind of falling out of favor for very similar reasons, where it is very developer focused. And, especially in today's world with marketing technology, MarTech, as you call it, being so prominent, and marketers wanting to A/B test quickly, not have to rely on developers all the time to make small changes. They are looking for a solution just like WordPress to actually be able to do that themselves. So I feel like unless Drupal and Joomla do something big to kind of revamp their user interface, I feel like they'll see their market share falling even further. And that's where, players like Webflow are coming into the picture. In fact, there's quite a few no-code / low-code solutions coming out, like Bubble is one of them. There's another one that I can't remember. But yeah, Bubble is also really taking hold. It's getting a lot of mention out there too. And I think that's a good thing because it keeps WordPress on its toes as well. People who don't really need anything out of the ordinary, right? Like, for example, Shopify's big claim to fame is you have products, you want to load them and get a site out, you have your logo, you don't need a developer, right? Just sign up, create a store, point your domain name to that store, load up your products, away you go. So as long as you don't need anything out of the ordinary, I think there is a big market for low-code and no-code solutions. WordPress, I feel, to me, it hits the sweet spot because you can do things right out of the box and really you may not even need a developer other than having it set up on your server, ready for you to log in and do your thing. But if you want to actually customize it to your specific needs, WordPress is powerful enough to do that as well. To be very honest, when WordPress came out, I was a bit skeptical about it because I came from a time where we were doing things from scratch, writing custom code based on lower level frameworks. And that worked because it gives you all the power in terms of what the UI should look like, what the logic should do, and things like that. WordPress came along as a blogging engine, really, that is its roots. And it felt like it's trying to do more than just be a blog. And that didn't sit well with me because I feel like you're trying to kind of shoehorn other functionality, right? So I remember when WooCommerce came out, I'm like, no way. Now you're going to make a blog, an e-commerce site. How's that going to work? But I think to WordPress's credit, they've actually tried to keep up, innovate. They've cleaned up the code as well as they went along and made it much more developer friendly as well for people to write plugins and extend functionality that way too. Right. So yeah, that's definitely one thing in WordPress's favor. Yeah. The other thing that I really like about WordPress is its ecosystem of plugins and themes, right? So no two websites that are built on WordPress need to look similar, as you have a variety of themes that you can pick and choose from. So if you're a travel website, you can go out there, search for travel themes, pick one. If you don't want to change it too much, even easier, install the theme, change the content, change the images if you like, and you can get your site up and running. So that's the beauty of it. And most of the time, you don't even have to pay for these themes. There's a lot of good quality free versions of plugins and themes available. Of course. Now you don't actually see that in a lot of other ecosystems. And I feel like that has played a big part in its success. Now, talking about themes, there are various options available to people. Now, you could kind of go off the shelf and get a theme from a marketplace like ThemeForest or Envato. That's not a bad option if you like what you see and you don't plan to change things around. You don't want to change the layout and things like that. But if you actually want to be able to design your page to a particular specification, right? You've got this in mind, there needs to be a particular order of sections and how they should look. Then I think you're better off with a theme like Divi or Elementor, a page builder rather, because these page builders, what they allow you to do is you can actually drag and drop and build your pages visually, right? So you don't have a backend interface that looks very much different from the front end. You actually see how it's going to look like in the end product and be able to move things around. Now, my personal preference is to use Divi because they actually have been innovating rapidly, much rapidly compared to the competitors. I think Elementor and Divi are the only two page builders that stand out from the rest. There are a few others as well, WP Bakery is another one, which I've not heard a lot of good things about. But again, see what works for you. So we spoke about WordPress's market share in the CMS space, where it is 64.2%. But the other number to note is, of all the websites on the internet, WordPress still has a market share of about 43%. So that's quite a bit, right? Just imagine, of all, like for every 10 websites on the internet, 4 are WordPress. That's massive. That's massive popularity. So it's going to take some time, I think, for the other contenders to catch up. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out.
One question I have, Venks, for you is, lately, a lot of business owners, especially the small business owners, they don't want to spend much on their website, and they often find a relative or someone who's a part-time website designer or something. And these guys usually, because Wix and Squarespace, these platforms allow you to create websites very quickly. And these websites look very beautiful. I mean, yes, they do look beautiful.
As long as you don't want to change things too much, they look beautiful. I agree with that.
Yeah, but my question is, and if you can quickly answer that, is would you recommend people to go with Wix and Squarespace?
If you give me those two options, I would say don't go with them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm not in favor of anything other than WordPress, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if you take e-commerce sites, for example, and you say, would you go with WordPress/WooCommerce and Shopify? I would say it depends, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Answer to that would be, what are you really after? How much level of control do you need? Now, Shopify, and we kind of learned this the hard way a few years ago when we worked on a Shopify site for a client, where I was really surprised to find out that in their plan, which was a paid plan, but a lower paid plan, you couldn't actually change the look and feel of the checkout experience. You were pretty much, what is out there is what you have to work with. And the client wanted to change that. And I did a bit of research, and I found out that you have to upgrade to Shopify Plus, which is the minimum of $2,000 per month to be able to do that. And it just felt like a big jump up from, I don't know, $50 a month or something to be able to do that. So if you don't want to do that and you just have products and you want to go live, I would say go with Shopify. It has a low upfront cost. But if you actually want to be able to decide every little element of your design and even functionality, right? Like if you want an e-commerce site, but you also want to do things like do bulk discounts for a group of products, for example, or you want to be able to provide a site where you can actually custom design a t-shirt, for example. So you might want to extend functionality and add a t-shirt designer element to it. Those things can get a bit tricky in Shopify. I'm not saying it's not possible, because just like WordPress, the Shopify ecosystem has evolved quite a lot. What you call as plugins in WordPress, you call it as apps in Shopify. So you could potentially get a Shopify app that does what you want as well. It's a build versus buy option, really. So the answer is it depends. WooCommerce/e-commerce aside, if you want to think about just building a site, I wouldn't go with Wix and Squarespace, purely because I have seen that the code that they generate is not the best in terms of the markup, and it's not the most SEO friendly. I've rarely come across any site on page one for any competitive keywords that was built on Wix, right? And I'm sure you would have some thoughts on that as well from an SEO perspective.
Of course.
Is it good or not? So in WordPress, we'll talk a bit more about it later in this episode. From an SEO point of view, there's a lot you can do, which you might not be able to do when it comes to Wix or Squarespace. 100%. And pretty much, why have a site if you can't optimize it for search engines, right? So that factor alone would rule out things like Wix and Squarespace. So coming back to plugins and themes, there's a number of plugins. I don't even have a count of how many plugins there are. But there's a few plugins that we use that actually works really well. And it's almost something we use for every site that we build. So WP2FA is one. So 2FA stands for two-factor authentication, which, by the way, I feel every WordPress site should have it. So if you are trying to log into the WordPress backend, you shouldn't just rely on username and password. You have to have two-factor authentication turned on, because because of its popularity, WordPress is a big target for hackers as well.
Yep.
And because of its openness, right? WordPress is open source. The plugins and themes are open source. Every now and then, vulnerabilities are discovered in WordPress core or a plugin or a theme. And when these vulnerabilities are discovered, because of WordPress's popularity, hackers are just running scripts to find WordPress websites. And it's very easy for those scripts to find out if those websites contain this vulnerable plugin or theme. And if they do, then it's very easy to exploit them.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't keep your WordPress website maintained, then it's just a matter of time before it gets hacked. That actually doesn't make WordPress insecure by itself, right? It just means that you haven't done what's needed to keep it up to date.
It's
So
like
that kind of forms a big part of what we do.
I think it's like keeping your door unlocked at a parking lot, and then saying, "Oh, you're just saying that the car is not manufactured properly or something."
Yeah, exactly. Or you're in a neighborhood where it's known for break-ins and burglaries, and you're not keeping your door locked, right? Of course, it's just a matter of time before you get robbed.
Yeah, and I'm quite surprised, when sites comes to us and they have been working with a lot of agencies. Recently, I saw a website and it was running on WordPress 4. The latest is 6 something, and it was running 4, and it was also running on PHP 4 point something. And I was so surprised, no one ever touched the backend, and the previous agency was doing SEO for them. So, now these websites like these are, the hackers would love them.
That actually baffles me, which host even actually runs PHP4. So, there's a lot to say about the host as well. The website is hosted.
It's an Australian host, local hosting company, by the way.
Wow. Yeah. Even PHP 7.2 or 7.x is now considered out of support. They're encouraging people to upgrade to PHP 8. So it's just crazy. Yeah. So coming back to plugins, WP2FA is an example of something that's available out of the box for free, which helps because you don't need to go and purchase yet another thing to benefit from something like this. There's also the Redirection Plugin. So if you actually want to have new URLs, like suppose you go through this SEO exercise and you want to rewrite your URLs, at the same time, you don't want to lose traffic coming to the old URLs. It's very simple exercise to install the plugin, put in the redirections for the old URLs to go to the new URLs. So I think that's definitely a good plugin to have. And there are a number of SEO related plugins. Yoast SEO is one of them. Rank Math is another one of them. The one particular plugin that I like that a lot of people don't think about unless you have a bit of technical experience is code snippets. Because code snippets, what it allows you to do is it allows you to extend functionality of your site without having to install yet another plugin. Because it's great to have plugins, but at the same time, you don't want to have too many plugins because every plugin adds to your execution flow and it has the potential to slow your site down. So, it's definitely, every time I see a website with like 40 plugins, 50 plugins, I really get worried because, do you really need those many plugins? Or do you have the best versions of those plugins as well, right? If you need a redirection plugin, which plugin are you using? Is that the most secure? So there's so many questions around plugins and people don't get it because they don't have the experience. And they feel, there's a plugin for that. Let's install it and it'll work. So that worries me quite a bit.
And the problem with a lot of developers is that they try a lot of plugins, and then what they do is they forget to uninstall the previous one which they tried. And so yeah, inexperienced developers kind of, because they don't care how slow the website is loading, etc. They just want the thing to be fixed, and
Yeah,
that creates a lot of problem. Yep.
yeah. The problem is solved. I'm not going to go and clean up, the
Yeah,
plugins. I'll have
yeah.
2 or 3 plugins that do the same thing, and I'm just using one of them. Slightly better, but even not as good is keeping a plugin there deactivated because you haven't used it. You're not using it. If you know you're not going to use it, just uninstall it, because even if it's
Yeah.
deactivated, it's there in
Yeah.
it's taking up space. It's created tables that you don't need as well. So
Yeah.
that's another thing
Keep
to think about.
it clean. Yeah.
Keep it clean. And a lot of WordPress websites sadly are not kept clean because no one cares, or
Yeah.
the developer who's in charge of it doesn't care. The same goes for the media library as well. Like, if you upload images to be used and you feel like that's not the best image or it's too big, you will need to resize it, go back in and actually remove the older image, the big sized image. Because if you don't, guess what? Your backups are going to take longer because your whole
Yeah.
site size is now big, unnecessary.
And also when you upload images, name them what the image is. Like, don't name them 1, 2, 3 or 5, 6. It helps in SEO, number one. And number two, it helps like if you go to a file manager or something, you know what those images are about. So take that extra effort and name the images of what the image is. It a stool? Is it a box? Is it a bicycle? Whatever it is, just name the damn thing.
Yeah, especially the alt text field, right?
Yeah.
There's quite a few fields when you upload an image. There's the alt text, there's title,
Yeah.
there's caption. They all have different purposes. For SEO purpose, alt text is the most important one. There is no evidence that the others are important from an SEO perspective.
Yeah.
So definitely, at a minimum, the alt text needs to be put in, which describes the image. And you want to describe it in a way where it actually helps from an SEO point of view as well. So, suppose it's a tourism related website and you are seeing 2 people standing in front of Lake Jindabyne, for example, right? So what you would want to do is you say 2 people standing in front of Lake Jindabyne, not just 2 people standing in front of a lake, right?
Yeah.
So that Lake Jindabyne actually in the alt text will help your SEO efforts as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Title is something if you put in and someone hovers on that image, it'll show as a slight pop-up. So that helps people with impairments as well. If they're using a screen reader, it might help. So that is something you can use as well. Same goes for caption. Caption is more about if you want to give credit to the person who took the picture and your theme is set up to actually show captions for the image. Whatever you put in will actually show below the image as well. So they all have different purposes. So you just want to make sure you're using at least at a minimum the alt text, if not the others. So from a performance point of view, how does WordPress perform? Similar to what we've been discussing in terms of plugins, if you just install a whole lot of plugins and do not keep it up to date, your performance is gradually going to go down. I personally, when I look at websites and I'm trying to optimize the performance, one of the first things I do is make sure none of the plugins that are not needed are there. So uninstall all the unnecessary plugins. Same goes for themes. Many people have 2021 theme, 2022 themes, and they have got a custom theme, and then they've got a child theme. Generally, WordPress suggests you to have a backup theme. So if your main theme goes corrupt, your site will not look broken. It'll fall back to the default theme, the backup theme. I don't know how well that works because a lot of the websites actually are not just backwards compatible out of the box, right? To be safe, you could leave a backup theme, but don't leave 4 or 5 themes lying around. So just keep your themes and plugins in check. The next thing I like to do is use a performance plugin like WP Optimize. There's a number of different plugins. WP Optimize is one, WP Rocket is another one. I have found WP Optimize work well for me. It might not work well for you, but play with it and see what your numbers are. The best place to measure your performance is to go to say gtmetrics.com. put your URL in there, you'll get your Google Page Speed Insights scores. You'll also get your YSlow scores as well. And these reports actually are quite good because they actually tell you what's not right on your site. And it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to address them.
Well,
resolve them.
One thing is that, there are so many things out here, right? So as a business owner, okay, even if I want to maintain my website, even if I know WordPress, if I, at times I might not be capable of, keeping everything up to date. So is there like a service, or is there like, can I, get this done without logging into my backend, for example? Now, I know there is something called as enable or auto update. Do you recommend doing that for the plugins, themes, etc.? Also for the WordPress, do you recommend doing that? B, if not, what are my options?
I personally, I'm not a big fan of enabling auto updates for plugins and themes. And a big reason for that is plugins and themes can be used in various different configurations, right? You could have a plugin update that will actually cause a conflict with another plugin as well, and your site can break as a result. So I wouldn't just set it and forget it and hope everything just continues to work. My preference to manage updates is to actually have a staging environment set up for your website. So a staging environment is nothing but a copy of your website on a different URL. It's got its own database. So it's got the same plugins and themes, but just available on a different URL, right? So what happens is if you actually have updates, you can apply your updates there. And then just test your site end to end on the staging side to make sure everything looks the same, everything continues to function. Because if it does, then you can safely update them on your production site. That's the safe way to go about it. Now, if you're managing multiple sites, then you don't have to do this by logging into the backend for each of those sites. You could use a service like WP, Manage WP, or Infinite WP. There's also Made WP. These sites actually allow you to hook up different WordPress websites to their service and have a central dashboard where you can manage these updates centrally. That's what we do for our clients as well. But that's not the only thing we do. We also make sure that these updates are first applied to a staging site. Our QA person then goes in and checks that everything continues to look good, everything continues to function well, and then we roll out those updates to production site. Really, that is the only 100% sure way of making sure that your site continues to function with updates.
And do you take backups as well before doing this?
Oh, definitely. So now the backups that we take depends on the upgrade that is happening, right? For example, if WooCommerce is jumping up from WooCommerce 5 to WooCommerce 6, now that's a big jump, right? So that in that case, we'll take a backup right away just before applying these updates. Because don't forget, we are doing this first on staging, right? So if there's potential data loss or anything with an upgrade, which generally doesn't happen. Most of the time, it's just something that looks broken, which you can fix. You wouldn't have to take backups, but then also you want to make sure you are doing nightly backups anyway, right? That's best practice. So if you do want to recover, you can recover from last night's backup. So that is something we just put on a schedule, and it happens every night for our clients anyway. So you have backups available. But then depending on the potential impact of an upgrade, where we feel like if some of a plugin or theme is jumping a major version up, then we'll take a backup as an extra layer of precaution.
So Vinks, the care plan, what does it do for business owners or website owners?
Yeah, so in my experience, what we've seen is it's just not enough updating plugins. There's a lot of other things you need to think about to make sure your WordPress websites are in top shape, right? So obviously, plugin updates, theme updates, WordPress code updates, that's something we do at a regular cadence. So we do it weekly, if not weekly, we at least do it twice a month to make sure everything is up to date. If a security vulnerability is exposed in any of the installed plugins, we don't wait until the next week comes along. We patch it within the hour, within the business hour, just to reduce that exposure for that particular website.
Yeah.
Other than updates, what we do is we do daily security scans. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to check for malware and things like that on these websites and make sure they're clean.
Yeah.
We also do weekly performance scans. So what this performance scans allows us to do is it actually checks the site's performance against Google page speed insights and why slow.
Yeah.
So suppose someone has made a change to the homepage, uploaded a really heavy image as the hero image, that'll get picked up in the performance scans. Now, if you don't have these scans, you won't know, right? And that page weight will actually lead to a drop in your SEO rankings as well. It'll have an impact on SEO. So performance scans can pick that up very quickly. So we know something's changed about the page, and then we can go in and fix that. We also have 24/7 support, on-call support for uptime-related issues. So if your site goes down in the middle of the night for any reason, which it won't with all the care we are taking, but you still need to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's happening with my site? We actually have uptime monitoring on the site. So before you get a chance to pick up the phone, we'll get notified on our mobile phones that the site has gone down. We also do monthly reporting of all the work that is carried out on the WordPress website. So that way clients know that their site is being looked after well. So yeah, it's not just updates, it's a number of things we do to make sure that the WordPress website is running in top shape.
Yeah. So if I'm not hosting with you, so let's say I have another web host and if I just want to come to BroadWeb for, let's say, a care plan, do you still do that?
We can. It's not our preference because if it's not hosted with us, there are limitations to what we can do in terms of making sure it's secure. Yeah. But at a minimum, what we'll be able to do is do our updates, do our performance scans, do our backups, nightly backups as well. So yes, we can, but it's not a preference. And generally hosting, unless you have a really heavy traffic site, it comes for free in the care plan. Because the care plan is actually, the value comes out of everything we do, and hosting is just a small part of it. In terms of the site performance, WP Optimize is something we use quite heavily. And there's a number of functionality that's available within WP Optimize that helps us make sure that it continues to perform not only from a user's point of view, but also from a Google SEO point of view, right? Page speed insights and things like that. So one of the things we use WP Optimize heavily for is page caching. So every time, as you can imagine, for a CMS-based site, when a web page gets loaded, a call to the database is made, and that can be expensive. That can take time. So what page level caching does is it actually keeps a copy of your page available, and that is blazingly fast, right? So anyone hits the site, they get the page right away. You can specify how many hours it should cache the page for as well. The default is 24 hours. But if you have a site that is actually actively updated, you don't want to wait for a day for that site, for that content, the new content to be made available. So you might want to fine tune that and keep it as 1 hour, for example. But we've seen a big jump in performance improvement by using something like WP Optimize. Then there's a number of other technical things it does, like it inlines your CSS, it differs JavaScript and things like that. Other than WP Optimize, another plugin that we prefer in our setup is Shortpixel adaptive images. Now, what that does is it actually takes your images, and even if they're heavy, it actually resizes them on the fly and serves them up from a CDN, from a content delivery network. So that allows your images to be at the right size for the users, especially when they're on the mobile as well. So if your mobile device is like 420 pixels wide and your image is 1920 wide, it'll actually show you an image that is 420 pixels wide. So that leads to a big savings in the page transfer times as well. SEO, there's a lot. SEO-wise, WordPress does well. We won't go into details because that can be an episode by itself. But in general, you can do things like make sure your URL structure is correct, your right keywords are in your URL, your meta description is set correctly, and things like that.
Yeah. And everything of that can be done easily. So that user friendliness is great with WordPress.
Yeah, okay, you can imagine without something like WordPress, what you'd have to do is actually specify this on a spreadsheet and ask the developers to update it by hand, which is not scalable. You shouldn't really need a developer to optimize your page for SEO, for your basic things like your page titles, meta description, and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, just to recap, if you have a WordPress website, make sure your plugins are up to date. Make sure, if you can, avoid shared hosting. Keep an eye on your plugins. If there's a security vulnerability, just make sure it's patched right away. If you don't have a staging site, have a staging version of your website and apply your updates there, test, and then apply your updates on production. Make sure your security scans are run regularly. And there's a number of things that are needed to make sure WordPress works for you, as opposed to become a liability when it gets hacked, because a lot of WordPress websites get hacked daily.
I think most importantly, keep it clean. Most importantly, don't keep unwanted stuff lying there. That's where the hackers, because if there's a plugin or a theme that you're not using, you don't know about it, you don't look at it, and if it's not updated, that's where the hackers can come in. So keep it clean, delete whatever you're not using.
Yeah, absolutely. And if all of this is too much for you, just hire someone to do it. Either way, make sure it's done, because there's been too many horror stories about WordPress websites getting hacked.
Of course.
Which is unfortunate, because it actually gives WordPress a bad name, whereas it actually is a really good CMS that can really kind of set you apart from the competition.
It's the best, actually.
Yeah, and it's going to take some time for it to be unseated from its number one position. So as always, thank you for watching or listening to this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, please like and leave a comment about your thoughts on this topic. I'm sure we haven't covered everything, but if there's something you'd like to hear more about, have us do a deep dive on, let us know. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get notified about the next episode. We are aiming to do this weekly, so there's a lot of good content on digital marketing and technology coming your way. If you're hearing this as a podcast, do rate, review, and subscribe to the show if you haven't done so already. For past episodes, the easiest way to catch up is by going to broadweb.com.au/show. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.